summer to educate yourself, to enlighten yourself, to just continue to grow. My name is Jenny Antondo, and I am here as your moderator, host, MC. You want me to get you a drink or teach you how to work the chat? I can maybe do one of those things. So here's the plan. We have an excellent speaker today. It's actually part 2 of a 2-part series, but even if you missed part 1, today's will still make sense. It will still be really, really beautiful to be able to experience. So if you were not here last week, then you have no idea that you're in for such a treat today. Our speaker is wonderful. Her name is Yesi Alexander Montenegro. She is a business owner, an entrepreneur, and the CEO of Divinity Light Healing Boutique, which we got to learn a little bit about last week. It's really a fascinating business that brings in so many different components of what she does. So basically, along the course of her career, she worked as a program manager for an after-school program funded by the Department of Public Instruction in partnership with the United Migrant Opportunity Services. And that was with the Milwaukee, also worked with the Milwaukee Recreation Department for 8 years. Then in 2018, she started a consulting company to help coach, train, and inspire people on their mindset and how to reach their highest potential. And it's interesting because during these sessions, we've talked a lot about like the logistics of doing things and how to work through corporate paperwork and how to get grants and funding. This part, it's like the inside job, right? It's the internal stuff that we're talking about. So that company later merged with what we know today as Divinity Light, which is a company that's focused, again, on helping us to reach our highest potential by taking care of mind, body, and spirit. And so we'll get into some of that today. She is running this healing boutique that carries products that helps people with personal care. She also does workshops and training to teach people how to have a mindset shift and, again, to become our authentic selves. So we're actually getting to benefit from that today, and how incredible that we have access to this and access to her. Last week, we talked about breaking out, overcoming our own obstacles, and we talked about the energy involved in that. Today, part 2, like I said, it's still totally valuable if you missed part 1, is going to be perfectionism, overcoming your biggest light dimmer. We're going to talk about how to take steps toward the direction of our dreams with confidence. So if you missed part 1, it's up on the Sarah YouTube page. I highly recommend going back and listening to it after today, and you'll be able to get a lot from both of them. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to enjoy this discussion right along with everybody. I've got pen and paper ready to rock. Yesi, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Hello, hello, hello. So I'm so grateful to be here with you guys again today. I had so much fun last week, and getting to see, read, hear some of the feedback was fantastic. When I was getting ready for today and how I wanted to show up and what I wanted to share, my goal and my intention with my businesses and kind of the way that I show up in this world is I really aligned with that concept or that idea that I just want to help as much as possible. And the way that I want to help is by being my most authentic self and showing up in this world in a way that's not afraid to show maybe the dirty parts or the messy parts of things, right? Because as we're showing up in this world, especially with social media and all the pretty stuff that's out there, you only see a picture, right? And you're seeing a really well-placed picture of something that behind the scenes takes a lot of work to develop or get ready and present, right? And so the way that I show up is through that authenticity and through the messy parts, and I show the not so photographic or photogenic parts of the business, because a lot of being an entrepreneur is mostly that, right? And then you get snippets on TV or snippets on social media, and so as part of my purpose and aligning with that and coming on here, it's to show you that life, us being humans, living the human experience, can get kind of messy. It's not always perfect, but that's what makes it so beautiful. And again, having that mindset shift to teach people that maybe everything is perfect, right? Instead of saying things have to be perfect or have to be A plus B in order to have C, only then can I do something. No, what I teach people is everything is already divinely perfect, right? We need to start looking at it through eyes of love and appreciation, gratitude, compassion, and empathy. And first and foremost, we practice that within ourselves first, right? Because we're the one who are the captains of our ships, right? Of our businesses or our lives and what we want to do. So I teach people to take on a different perspective so that you can then show up as your most authentic self without fear, right? And really encompassing who you really are and showing up with courage, showing up with a knowing that you are divinely guided, that no matter what happens along the way, you will be able to manage. And again, I do that by sharing my story. I do that by sharing my process live. And when I started my first business, as Jenny mentioned, which was Featherlight, I started it because I wanted to be able to teach people Featherlight life lessons, right? And so I wanted to be able to be that example because when I started out the business, I started finding a lot of teachers, and these teachers already have books, right? They're already on TV. They've already got a really big following. And one of the things that I was really frustrated with was no, 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 no. It's great that you have the money. It's great that you're at that top, that's, that top of the mountain, that summit point. But what I really needed to know was when you're in the nitty-gritty, how do you get out of that? What do you do? What mentality do you adapt? What does your process look like, right? Because when I was starting the business and when I was going through this, my process was very messy. And I felt like I was messing up all the time. And I was always trying to be this perfect, right? Trying to make it look like the way that everybody else had curated it. But as I've been going through my journey, I've realized and I've learned it's just like, oh, that's just a side of things. Not everybody shows the messy side of things, which is most of the time. And so then what I started adopting was I want to teach people the mentality or the process of going through it. It's not just taking a magic pill and just like snapping my fingers and being like, oh, everything is perfect just because I said. It's actually taken a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of messing up, a lot of crying, a lot of losing faith sometimes, and then having what I call Jesus coming to Jesus moments where I've questioned and I've doubted. You see the background here is my boutique, but I will tell you that I had a year of me owning or leasing this space without having it running. Okay. And there were a lot of times when I was sitting in this space crying and asking, what have I done? What am I going to do? How am I going to continue this? And I just kept on hearing this message that said, if you build it, they will come, right? And I think that's a movie phrase. And so for me, it was like, okay, okay. And even before that, when I was in my early 20s going through my experience and going through my life lessons and journey, there was also a message that would keep coming in that you're destined for greatness. You're destined for greatness. And then eventually it became you are greatness. You are greatness, right? And so as I kept on growing and evolving, I started tapping into what does that mean? And for me, it was always an external thing, right? It was always, what are other people doing? Why is it that other people are so fortunate and lucky? And what I realized is that that's something that we create within ourselves, right? So it's not that people are so fortunate and lucky and they just, oh, this magical wand or no, it's a life experience, it's a life journey. And so for me today, what I really want to explain and express and teach and show is that the journey is already perfect. Okay. So let's start and I'll share with you that in my early 20s, and I shared with you a little bit on this last time where in my early 20s, I had a full psychiatric evaluation done because by that time, and the way that I got there was because I was sitting in a math class in one of my colleges and I ended up having a panic attack. And so I had to tell my college professor at that time, I'm not feeling well. I felt like I was going to die at that moment. I didn't know what was going on. It was really intense in my body. I didn't understand what was going on with myself. I felt lost in that moment. So in sharing that with my college professor, he then guided me to go to the student support center that they had there, which then they led me to say, maybe you want to look, to have a counselor, to see a psychiatrist. And then they led me to saying, well, you could have a full psych evaluation, see what's going on, see how you can manage your brain. And through that, I was diagnosed with depression and ADHD and anxiety and math phobia. There's so many things. And so through that trajectory, I ended up going through a series of things where I ended up living out of my car for a time in my life. I was couch surfing. I was living with different friends. I was struggling with keeping a stable job. I had dabbled in different jobs. And so for me, what I really had to evolve into or really learn was that it was because I was living in this mentality that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart enough, that I was broken, right? Especially at that time, there wasn't a lot of people that were coming to the forefront saying, hey, I have this, or I have that, or I struggle with this. For me, it was just like, well, I'm broken. I'm destined to like nothing. How do I get out of that? And so for me, there was a point in my life where I had a really big pity party. I did, and it lasted for a while until finally I got sick and tired of my own pity party, and I was just like, I would say I hit my rock bottom, right? And there were a lot of things that ended up happening that ended up for me hitting my rock bottom where I ended up, mixing meds and alcohol, and I was suicidal. And so I had a 2 week stunt where I was pretty much almost blacked out for those 2 weeks because I was pretty much done. I had given up on my life and I didn't really care anymore. And so it wasn't until then that my mom said, please trust us. Will you come back home and we'll help you? That I ended up moving back home with my parents. And this was like in my like early 20s. Okay. So again, what you see today, you see all of this beautiful stuff. It hasn't come just like so easy. It's come with a lot of work, and it's come with a lot of me hitting my rock bottoms and getting back up and hitting rock bottoms and getting back up again. And what I've learned is that it's a mentality that you have to adopt, and it's something that you have to practice on a daily basis, right? I have those negative thoughts on a daily basis that I have to work on overcoming. And a lot of that was that idea of perfect or perfectionism, or that idea that I wasn't perfect enough or good enough. And so, what I started learning about perfectionism is that it's a mentality that we learn or we create and develop within our own minds, right? So, we see pictures, we see other people, and it's a story that we create in our own minds, thinking, well, look how beautiful that is. And, or look, it doesn't look like they're struggling. They just have it made. When really that's not the truth. And I promise you, if you were to really ask people what's behind the story, people will tell you, or what's behind this picture, people will tell you that a lot of production went into that, right? And even on videos or on YouTube or television or social media, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and we don't always see that. We don't see the people getting mad. We don't see the people getting frustrated. We don't see the people feeling anxious and nervous right before the countdown of like we're going live, right? Because that is what's real. Everybody likes to see like the end result and the pretty part of it, but real life is messy sometimes, right? And real life is not always what we think is this like curated thing, and you just put a candle and it's all glitz and glamour and it's all perfect. So for me, what I've always told people is, look, I've had these things in my life. I had these diagnoses. I've had these things. And it was ultimately, it came down to me to decide that I was going to come out of those things, right? And again, it was a journey. It was a process. And what I ended up having to learn how to do was to fall in love with my journey, with my process, and ultimately falling in love with myself and loving myself. And that's one of the things that we're not taught that, right? We're not told, love yourself, respect yourself, give yourself kindness. How do you speak to yourself first? And again, it's going back to that whole energy thing. Remember last week? I don't know if everyone was there. Remember we talked about the water and being that light and emanating and growth, and that it doesn't matter how tainted the water gets or how dark it gets, as long as we keep growing and evolving and learning and putting into practice, we can overcome a lot of those things, right? And so for me, where I started was through Louise Hay and Dr. Wayne Dyer. They have now passed, but they've left golden nuggets. And so today, one of the things, I'm going to be sharing a lot of things, and I'm going to try to get as much as I can in, but also remember that I did say last week that I'm going to give two private coaching, give access to two private coaching for two people who remember the keywords. And then for the first 10 people that send me an email and send in that email the phrase that I gave, I will be doing a mastermind group with those 10 people. It'll be a 5-week intensive mastermind group. So as long as the first 10 people that email me will sign you up, and I'll send more information to get that started. But for today, I'll try to give you as many tidbits and nuggets as much as I can, especially if you don't know me or you haven't followed me on social media. Go ahead and check that out as well. And then I think Jenny or the SAID group can send out that information as well. But today we're talking about Louise Hay, and she has a book called Inner Wisdom. I hope you guys can all see that. And one of the things that Louise Hay talks about is positive affirmations. And so if you're new to this, the positive affirmations, it's how we speak to ourselves, and it's a programming that we're supposed to do. So it's basically doing mirror work and standing in front of the mirror and talking to yourself. I love myself unconditionally, just as I am, right? How many times do you tell yourself that you love yourself unconditionally, right? Our love for ourselves is very conditional, and that's where that perfectionism comes through, because we think that we're only worthy, or that we're only good enough, or that we're only lovable if we present ourselves or if we are a certain way. And I'm here to bust that myth to you and tell you that's not true. What's true is that you already are lovable just as you are, right? You don't need to work harder or do more or look a certain way to be lovable. You already are. So if you start understanding that about yourself, because that's not how we always talk about ourselves to ourselves. And remember that last week I explained that our brain is like our boss, right? And if our boss is telling us you're only lovable if you do this, if you do that, why would you want to continue working for that boss? That's exhausting, right? So again, keeping that boss in our brain on check and saying like, no, I'm already worthy, I'm already valuable. And so what I'm saying, what you hear me saying, is those positive affirmations already, right? I am worthy, I am lovable. And those positive affirmations start with that I am, and then you say lovable, worthy, smart, intelligent, whatever resonates with you. And sometimes I will be completely honest with you, that's kind of hard to do. And a lot of people, when we've done this work, they don't like looking at themselves in the mirror. They don't like making eye contact with themselves. A lot of people have said that when they say, I am lovable, or even if they look in the mirror and say, I love you, they start crying because maybe they haven't heard that for a really long time, or they just don't really believe it for themselves. A lot of people will say, I love you. And it's just like, yeah, what's there to love, right? They continue. And so when you start reprogramming that within yourself, it may feel uncomfortable because that's not something that we're accustomed to doing. But I promise you, if you keep going, it will eventually, you'll start to believe it, and you'll start to think, yeah, I am lovable. What's there not to love about me, right? I am resilient. I am passionate. I am strong. I have overcome. And so eventually you'll start changing the narrative, right? Once you go past that discomfort, or that uncomfortable, that just that not knowing, you'll finally get to the point where it's just like, yeah, that's right, I am, right? And so Louise Hay talks a lot about that, and she has several books out. But for this one I wanted to share with you guys today, um, I know that there are a lot of people here that are coming from different walks of life, but I'm going to focus on the business side of it, right? Just for this moment. And we're going to read a positive affirmation. So one of the things that we have here is, my business is prosperous. Okay. My business is prosperous. So you can also use the positive affirmations not only for yourself, but for things around you, right? So my business is prosperous. That's that positive thinking. Remember we talked about words are vibration and our intentions are vibration. And so what we're putting out there, we're also attracting, right? So last week, I really talked about more of like the philosophy, the theory behind it, right? And why is it important that we change our mindset? Why is it important that we change our words? And so again, if you go into your business thinking, oh, this is going to be a failure, just watch, well, then you will be spending a lot of energy and time looking for those failures. And that is what you're gonna see and what you're gonna catch. But if you always think, okay, just always think, how can we make it prosperous? How can we make this work? What do we need to do? And one of the things that I have also learned in getting in alignment with how I've done my businesses and how I've lived my journey is really get clear about my what. What is my what, right? My what looks like this. So when I manifested this building or this space, I got very clear, and I have a really good friend of mine, Danny, who started the businesses with me, and he's also been helping me. And so I remember having a conversation with him where I said, okay, Danny, I want to attract a space that's very magical. What I want to create is a safe space for people to be able to come and share like-minded philosophy together. We can grow together. We can share, and it's creating a safe space for people to feel, for any walk of life, to be able to come, where we talk about mental health and we improve and we share our gifts together. And so I said, I just want to. How do we find that? And so I was really clear about my what. I even drew it out, and I kind of just had like a rough sketch. I was like, this is kind of what I want it to look like. And so after that, I just surrendered to it. And I was like, I know my what. I don't need to focus on the how, right? Because sometimes we get so caught up in like the how are we going to do it? We have to make it look like this, we have to make it look like that. And that's where we get caught up. And that's where that perfectionism comes in, right? If you can focus on your what and set a real clear picture of your what you want it to look like, be open to how the world is going to send you the things, the people, the links, the teachers, whatever it is you need for that what part. Okay. And again, it doesn't, again, when we have that perfect mentality of in a perfect world, it has to look like this. Well, then you're not leaving room for, but things can get uncomfortable. Things can get a little weird. Things can get, you're not necessarily knowing everything. So if you can be open to receiving, and if you can be open and knowing that you'll be able to handle whatever comes your way, and if you just express yourself as, for me, when we were looking for my space, I was like, let's just do research. Let's do research. Let's just see what's out there. I don't know if I can't see or if I don't do research. And so in our research, this building popped up. And as soon as I walked up, it was just a knowing inside, and it was a feeling, right? Going up those stairs and then opening up to the space that had so many windows, and it was so beautiful and bright and light. And in that moment, I was just like, this is it. This is the space. Now, I did give myself a 2-week period. I didn't just like sign right there at that moment. I was like, let me think about this. Let me really sit and mull it over. And so when I went back, I was like, I don't want to, because knowing myself as well, I was like, I don't want to act impulsively. I was like, let's just sit with it and see. And so we did crunch some numbers. At that time, I also decided, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to really give for this space? And what am I willing to? And so sometimes in the spiritual community, people will talk about the positive affirmations and the vibrations, and they'll say, oh, always think in the positive, always think in the positive. But my brain, because my brain shows up differently, had to have that real conversation of, what am I willing to give up? What am I willing? What's the worst case scenario? And in my mind, I was like, well, I'll be homeless. And in my mind, I was like, well, I already lived out of my car for a while. So like, that's okay. I've already experienced that. And I was able to come out of that and overcome that. So like, is that really the worst case scenario? No, not really. And I was like, if everything, what am I willing to commit to make my dream a reality? And I was like, if I end up living out of my space for a while, then I'll do it. I'm willing to do it. That's how much I was committed. That's how much I believed in myself. That's how much I was willing. That's how much I love this project. That's how much I love what I'm doing, that I was willing to take a big hit, right? Now, again, with those positive thoughts and really willing to put in the time and the effort, I've been able to, again, remember, this has been a process. It's been about 1.5 years that I've been able to get to this point. And I'll be completely honest and transparent with you again, because remember, I'm all about authenticity and transparency. Divinity Light right now is making just enough to pay its monthly bills, okay? And it just made its first month where I was able to pay the bills. I'm not making a profit from it right now. I'm also doing other side jobs to be able to compensate for my own personal expenses. And so again, when I went into this, I was willing to take on the debt. I was willing to ask for loans. I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of friends helping and investing throughout my journey, because, again, I was willing to ask for help. I was willing to put myself in those very vulnerable states where I had to ask for other people to be able to help me make my dream come true. A lot of the times we think that we want to do this alone, and I can do this alone, because you want to show people. What I've learned is that it's actually really about community building, and the more people that you have on your side and the more people that you have supporting you, that's what really makes it worthwhile, because you have this love that's coming your way, and then that motivates you, it inspires you. And for me, when I get in my dark moments, when I'm sitting here alone in my space thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? I think about all of the people who have invested in me and all of the people who have believed in me. And so it's just like, okay, remember, because we forget sometimes, right? And we have to be responsible about reminding ourselves too that, like, okay, hey, we got this. We started this. If we started it and we got that idea, only we got that idea, and we're going along, and God or the universe or whatever you want to call it is providing for us to be able to continue doing this, to continue our purpose, to giving that gift, right? And again, it's all about aligning with those intentions, right? The intentions of love, the intention of helping others, the intention of helping ourselves. And again, standing in that divine right of, that's it. I am already a divine being. I am worthy. I am valuable, and I can help others, right? And so when you are in that mentality, instead of everything has to be perfect in order for me to do this, it only can be like this, then you're blocking yourself off from other things that could be coming in. And the thing is that when we say we create this firm box of things and we're like, it can only look like this and only then when I'll be able to go. Well, maybe here's an opportunity that comes that doesn't look like the image that you were like, it has to look like this. And maybe that opportunity is bringing you something else, something more, something higher that we didn't think about, right? And so there's a gift that's coming our way, but we're closed. We're like, no, that's not the perfect image that I have painted. By being open and receptive and saying, I know my what. I am open and receptive to the how, to just, it's already beautiful and perfect. I'm just going to let it come in and be in that flow state. And again, remember, we were talking about the surrender, the fluidity with the water, right? And we were talking about being able to fill yourself with that so that you can recognize those gifts when they're coming in. So again, as far as the positive affirmations, and we're going with the business affirmation, this one is, my business is prosperous. And so I'm going to read from you a little clip, or the quip that goes along with that. And it says, I am divinely guided, so my business prospers, expands, and grows. I now choose to release any negative thoughts about cash flow limitations. I open my consciousness to a quantum leap of prosperity by thinking and accepting that large amounts of money flood to my bank account. I have plenty to use, to spare, and to share. The law of prosperity keeps the flow of cash moving in abundant amounts. It pays my bills and brings me everything I need and more. I now choose to be a living example of prosperity consciousness. I live and work in comfort and ease and beauty. I have inner peace and security. I watch with joy and gratitude as this business continually grows and prospers far beyond my expectations. I bless this business with love. So we did a little a guided meditation last week. And so if you really listen to this, it's kind of like that guided meditation too, right? And to be honest, let's really think about it. How many times are we talking about our businesses in a very abundant way and in a very lovely, prosperous way? A lot of the time when we're talking about businesses or the next steps that we're going to take, we're always worried about, where's it going to come from? How am I going to make the bills? And we're always living in that fear state of, I don't know how. And kind of that, again, it's that energetic frequency that we're putting out of scarcity or fear. And so when we're able to open up and just trust, fully trust that we're always going to be okay, no matter what the situation may be, then we can really, really step into our authentic selves and be able to grow. So last week, I want to be able to see if you are all here. I can't see everyone. And so if I can get some feedback and see if you guys are keeping up with me and interacting with me in the chat, I want to see if you were with me last week. I want you to type in the chat, I was here, so that I know who was here, and if I can see the chat, because I'm going to put out another question for y'all. So Jenny just sent a message to everyone. And then if you do type in the chat, remember that you're sending it to everyone so that we can all be able to see it as well. And then I'll give you a little bit of time. So remember what we're going to be focusing on, right, as far as that perfectionism, while I'm waiting for my people to type in the chat, I was here. Remember that we're going to be focusing on, for the perfectionist mentality, that we're going to focus on our what, right? Oh, wonderful. That's awesome. I'm getting some responses now. So remember, we're changing our mentality. And what we're doing is we're really working on the vibrations that we're putting up to align with what we want to do, right? And remember that everybody's journey was different. Everybody goes through hardship. And just because you see something in a perfect way, what we think is perfect, right? Or that idea or mentality that if something is curated in a very beautiful way, that's perfect. when we remember that everything, the mess and the hard part is also perfect and beautiful, then we can start really taking steps with courage to be able to go towards our dreams, right? And making them a reality. Okay, that's wonderful. I love to hear it. I'm getting some feedback. I was here. That's awesome. Okay. So I want you to type in the chat something that you need to work on. If you are working on not believing yourself because you have fear-based mentality, or there's somewhere in your life that you're thinking, okay, I really struggle with finances or abundance. I want you to really think about what is something, okay, something that in my life I am not maybe having the best mentality about it. I don't really say the most positive things about it. What's one thing in your life? And you can say finances, you can say your business, you can say personal development, you can say, okay, I love that. Why is this happening to me? Okay. So I want you to type in, um, I love it. So I want you to type in one thing. What's something that you would really like to work on, as far as being able to attract that, get on that vibrational frequency so that we can attract more of the things that we're wanting instead of the things that we're not wanting. Okay. So I see people say things about finances. I would like to work on my finances. If anybody else would like, and it even comes to basic things, and I'll set the example of myself. So there are three things, and we're going to work on this together while everybody else is putting in something in the chat. We've got a couple of minutes left that I want to be able to guide you through this so that you can take this with yourself and then work on this by yourself when you're in your own private time. So one of the things is, what are three things that I really want to work on? Like I said, not everything is perfect all the time, right? And in the sense that we have created what perfection looks like, right? I look at it as it's all perfect. It's all fine. Everything is great. This is part of the journey, and I'll be able to overcome whatever discomfort I may feel, right? Okay. So, for example, you see that the space is put together and it's very beautiful. You should have seen what the space looked like before, days before I opened, and there were things all over the floor. It was a mess. And I had a lot of support, and I had a really good friend who called in her troops to help me. And so you should have seen, we were moving like little ant workers, not like hours before this place was going to be open. And again, I have a storage space over there that's full to the brim. Okay. And even in my own house, I'll say this. I moved back in with my parents last year, and that was something that I'm also working on adapting still. And to be honest with you, I've been sleeping on my couch because I still have not settled my bedroom. Okay. And so, but you see this beautiful space. And so what I had to learn was, where do I want to put my energy? What's the importance? What's the thing that I want to work on right now? For me, I trusted myself, and I'm like, it's okay. I'll be able to get to that a little bit later. For right now, this is something that I want to work on, right? So people might think, oh, everything is not perfect because of that, but it is, because it's just like, look, I was able to get my business up and running, right? There are other things in my life where I may have had to put a pause because energetically I decided to focus on something else, right? I decided to put my energy on creating this space and this project, right? And there are other things that it's just like, it might take a little bit longer for me to get to, but that is okay, right? So you're going to choose the one project that you want to put a little more energy into, right? A little more time and focus and energy into. And so I see a lot of finance, communication. What we're going to do is we're going to focus, and we're going to say why. We're going to think about what's our limited belief behind it. So there's something that I want you all to remember, and I'm going to share with you guys. I'm going to share this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's on shiny paper, but it says E plus R equals O. Okay. So it stands for event plus response equals outcome. So let's say that my event is creating this business, or my event is, oh, here, I have my car, my trunk, the trunk of my car is full of tables and chairs from an event that I did for Divinity Light 2 weeks ago. Okay. And it's still full. I haven't taken the tables out and whatnot. So the event is, um, I have this, and my desire is to clear out my car, right? But other things have taken precedence and have taken priority, and I put more energy, like opening up the shop or other jobs that I've had to do. So for me, it's like the event is, my desire is to clear out my car. What are the things that I am willing to do, right? Who would I need to call? Do I need to ask for help? How do I set that up, right? And so the event, let's just say this is the example of, let's say that my event is I decided that I was going to clean it out the night before. And I didn't do the phone call, or the person that I was hoping to have help me was not available. I can respond in a way where I can be mad. I can say, see, no one is available to help me. I'm not good enough. See, I messed up. Or I can respond and say, hey, that's okay. What's one thing that I'm willing to do? How can I start? What's the next step that we can start to actually get some movement through here, right? And that was one of the questions that Jenny asked last week, which was, how do you put these things into practice? How do you put that into practice in your business, in your personal life? And so when she said, where can you start? Well, that's it. It's taking one step at a time. It doesn't have to be this big production. Again, with the perfectionism, we don't have to have like, it needs to look like this, it needs to be like this in order for me to take that step. What's one step that you can take? For me, I can commit to, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my hatch, and I'm going to take the foldable chairs that are in there, and I'm going to take them inside. And that's something that I can do on my own. I don't need someone else to help me carry the heavy stuff out. And so maybe during that time, I'll get motivated and I'll be so amped up because I'm actually moving the energy that I'll be like, oh, hey, maybe I can do it all by myself. I don't need help. Or in that time, someone else who can help me will come in that and will be able to clear out my car, right? So again, remember that the outcome then, if my attitude about it is, okay, I can do one thing, the outcome will be, hey, I got a step moving in the right direction for achieving my desire, right? So I didn't get upset about it. I didn't get frustrated with myself. I didn't beat myself up about it. I thought, well, what is one step that I can do? So um, we have learning the computer program. We're talking about communication. We're working on finances. So I want you to really think about, what is one step, one achievable step that you can take to be able to reach those things? So for communication, for example, what's something on Google? We have access to all the information now, right? So where on Google can you start communication tips, right? Maybe you can just start by saying, I want to read one article, or who are the best teachers out there in communication? Do they have a book out? Do they have a YouTube channel out? What's information? And start getting information and to be able to help yourself with those steps. Again, I would like to work on my finances, then start asking questions, right? And you have to ask. If you see other people that inspire you, or even if people that are coworkers or whatever the case may be, hey, how are you on your finances? Are you willing to talk with me? And the way that I always approach it is, I approach people with I set my intention first, like, hey, I'm really struggling with my finances and I really need help. Do you by any chance know anybody? How are you with your finances? Do you know anybody that I should read or talk to, that would be able to help me, right? Same with communication. Um, I feel that when we are, again, pure with our intentions, when we are vulnerable and where we're able to express ourselves to other people in creating community, that also helps us. Because when we're able to ask those questions and say, hey, do you know someone? Or again, I don't know if have heard the expression, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. Well, how will people know that you're ready or that you're looking for this information if you're not putting it out there, right? So again, it starts by us moving that energy, setting our intentions, focusing on our what, and then the how, by opening ourselves, the how will come. And again, when we are not in that perfectionist mentality where it has to look like this, otherwise, no. If you can just set your clear intentions, right? Your clear what, everything will come in. And again, by having this conversations together, you never know if you meet someone in the chat, that will be able to say like, oh, hey, I know someone, or reaching out. And again, it's creating community, it's getting that communication out there. And look at that, we're already working towards our goals and our desires together in a simple, we're having conversation in the chat. Okay, so I want to open up to questions right now. And does anybody have any questions for me, or anything that you want to add from what I just said? Um, I'm going to read. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So what I want to do is we're going to focus right now on that mirror work, right? I am worthy, I am abundant, I am valuable. And so one of the things that I do is when I'm going to stand in front of the mirror while I'm waiting for questions to roll in, is I connect with myself, with my heart center, by putting my hands over my heart. And that just makes me feel like I'm giving myself a hug. And sometimes, even if you don't want to do that, you can do just kind of like putting your hands towards your shoulders and kind of squeezing yourself, again, kind of emulating that idea of a hug or comfort. And so if you want to do that, or you want to put your hands over your heart, close your eyes, ground your feet flat on the floor. And we're really going to think about, what does love, a pure unconditional love, really look like for ourselves, right? It means no judgment, no criticism, holding the space. And when I say holding the space, it just means just standing there. No thoughts, no judgment or criticism thrown in that direction, just a pure love space. And at that time, we're not talking about, but I could be doing this, but I could be doing that. It's just an I love. I love. I love myself unconditionally, just as I am. Okay. And that's what we're going to be saying. And we're going to repeat that a couple of times. And I want you can either say it out loud or you can repeat it in your mind. And so we're going to tap into that, and we're going to take a deep breath in. And then you can either say out loud or think, I love myself unconditionally, just as I am. Breathe that in. I love myself unconditionally, just as I am. And we're going to do it one more time. I love myself unconditionally, just as I am. Take a deep breath in. And so I want you to think about, if anything comes up for you, um, when you have those moments with yourself, okay, some thoughts might come up, and there might be some, yeah, but. So really listen to the yeah buts. You don't need to attack that. You can accept that with, okay, yeah, but what? And use those as the lessons or that inner guidance of where you might be blocking yourself, right? And that's where you're able to identify, maybe as a child, right? There was a lot of issues with finances, or there wasn't a lot of good communication in the family. And so maybe that's at that point in your lifetime is when you started developing those different thought patterns, as far as, finances are limited, or I'm not good at communicating, or family's not good at communicating. And so when you do that, I love myself unconditionally, just as I am. And if something comes up against it, that's something that will help you identify, oh, that's an area that I need to work on. That's the mentality that I need to work on shifting. So use yourself as that inner guide to be able to see, where is the area that I maybe developed a mentality where it's not the most conducive to being able to grow, or it's in a perfectionist mentality, or it's in a negative mentality. Where can I offer or bring some love to that, and bring some truth and some light to that? And so that's an area where you can also start helping yourself, and how to apply this practice of getting out of that perfectionist mentality, and just accepting things as already perfect, as already divine design. And then how can you shed some truth? How can you shed some love and some light to be able to take that next step, right? And again, it's by event plus response equals outcome. The event or the desire is, I want to be able to achieve this. And if I take these next steps, it's okay if this didn't work. How can I practice resiliency to keep going, right? Because that response that you get from the work that maybe you had it a certain way and it didn't happen, well, okay, well, what's the next step, right? And then remember that by keeping that high vibration and keeping that resiliency and going again, you will then have a more positive outcome, instead of the ones that, again, with the way that we speak to each other, oh, this doesn't work, and see this and see that. Well, let's start putting the same amount of energy that we do when we're looking for how things are going to fail or how things are going to go bad. So let's start putting that energy and focusing, how can I make it happen? How can this be good? What do I need to do? And so again, we're going back to what we learned last week with changing that mindset. And again, as far as that perfectionist mentality, again, it's, how can we reframe? How can we reprogram? How can we already accept that everything is perfect, and that the journey is what we need to honor and practice gratitude for? Okay, so Jenny.
Yeah, so if you're good with it, we'll go forward with Q&A for the next 10 minutes or so,
Sounds good.
if that works for you. And it's interesting to see some of the responses. Somebody was asking me before I get too much further, are we going to get the second word? I'm not
Ah,
sure.
yes, thank you for reminding me. So the second word is can. So if you remember the last week's word, and then today's word is can.
Okay, and that is for explain what that is for so
That
that for the
is
people
for
that
the
weren't here last
first
time.
two, yeah, the first two people. So I'm actually putting in my chat the my okay, so I'm putting my email in there. So for the first two people that writes what last week's word was, and then today's word can, for those of you who watched the who watched the rerun of the video on YouTube or who were here last week, remember I said that I was going to be giving you the second word. So if you, the first two people who send me those emails that say, have that full phrase put together, will be getting a private personal 5-week coaching with me where we just do one-on-ones to work on overcoming whatever self-doubts or taking the next steps wherever you want to go in your life. And then for the first 10 people, okay, who are able to just send me an email, and we're going to do a reflection of what you learned today between last week and this week. What was the thing that you loved the most, and what's something that you really inspired you and you would like to work on? If you can send that to me in 2 sentences, the first 10 people who are able to do that will then get a mastermind group session with me.
Okay, perfect. And you guys,
Ah,
her email is in the chat. So,
so
so
make sure to email me.
so copy that. Yeah, so copy that and even just paste that into a note or something like that, or write it down in your notes as you're going. So let's talk about this concept of self-love, right? And you were talking about that, and it's interesting because I think sometimes in that arena, we look for encouragement almost we say, like, for example, let's use body image as an example. So people are feeling not great about themselves and they say, okay, well, I'm going to start following body positive bloggers. I'm going to follow somebody who's a model who also looks like me, to sort of like be able to see that. So that's one way about it. But I wonder why it is that we have to see somebody else looking a certain way and having that be accepted. Why
Yeah,
we can't just accept ourselves as we are without having to see somebody that looks like us on a
yeah.
magazine.
Yeah.
What's that about?
So the way that I related it is a big part of that is community, right? Sometimes we feel so isolated and we feel alone in that. And so sometimes seeing those examples can help us relate, and because we are seeing like, oh, that's what it looks like. That's just an example, that's an idea. And again, that also comes to the flip side of why we've created this mentality too of social media and other people saying like this is what it has to look like, as like this perfect mentality or this is what's valuable or worthy. And so again, it's a decision or a choice that we also have to be working on filling our own brains too with, okay, if this is a person that's very, again, conditional, it only has to look like this, that's probably some vibrationally, that's not a match for me. I'll say, nope, that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is someone who says where all bodies are perfect, or whatever the case may be. Your unique self is what shines. So I always go with an energetic match. If it inspires me, not if it takes me down, if it inspires me to step out of my own comfort zone, then that's what I want to follow. It So many of us speak to so many different, right? I can say one thing one way and people might not understand it, but then someone else will say it in a different way. It's pretty much the same thing that I was saying, but it'll resonate with someone else. And so it's different teachers and it's just those different examples where different people speak our language a little bit better and they translate that for us.
That's so true, and that's an interesting way to look at it. It just got me thinking as we were chatting. I was thinking, huh, I wonder why it is that we feel like we need to see somebody else, like before we say, no, it's okay to be like me just because I exist, just
Yeah.
just as I am. So it's interesting. Somebody's asking with regard to the giveaway that you're doing, if there's any options for people who are new, and I'm guessing that was the first 10 people to
Yes.
email you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So to the person who sent that question, for people who are new, email her to the Gmail address that she posted in. It's just a couple comments up. You have to scroll up on the chat.
Mhm.
Um, I also have to just honor you for being so open with your story. And so many times people will say that they want to be authentic and then just tell you like a little slice of the perfect part of their story. And you're like, well, are you sure? Was that it? Was that all you had? So thank you for being truly open.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to a place of self-love? And what do you have to do regularly in order to maintain it?
So really this journey has been, I would say that I started tapping into this stuff, I probably like in my early 21, 22. And that's when a documentary, Hungry for Change, came out. And I started tapping into those teachers. And so I would say that it has been a very long evolution. So here's an example. I injured my back in early 2000, like 2011. And I was told that I was going to need surgery. I was having to use a walker. And as someone who's in your early 20s having to use a walker, that's something that you can really take a hit on your self-esteem. And I was feeling really bad about myself. So I really had to do a lot of work as far as reading books and practicing time and time again, and really believing like, no, I can heal myself. I believe. And as an example of that self-love component, this past weekend, I decided that I wanted to do the Mud Girl run because I wanted to prove to myself that my body was capable and that I could do it. And, in this example, I went to go share it with my dad, and his response was not something that I think that maybe my inner child or whatever the case may be, was looking for validation, right? Like like, I'm proud of you, good job. But my dad didn't understand that. And at that moment, that wasn't the feedback that I received. The feedback that I received was that he said that he wasn't going to comment at that moment. And I took it as, okay, I held it together and I was like, okay, cool. That's okay. At that moment, I had to do a lot of mental work. Like, it was a really sore spot for me, right? Because I'm coming from a long time, 10 years of a lot of intense pain, of being in bed for a really long time, of not, thinking, guys, it got really bad at one point where I couldn't sit on the toilet. Like, I had to end up peeing in the shower because that's how bad it was. Okay. And so for me to be able to get to this point, again, you look for the people, your family members or whatever, someone to say, good job. And I had to really talk it out. I have a really strong support system. It's something that I've really worked on developing. And Danny is one of those people that I mentioned. And so I was able to talk it out with them. And I had to stand in my truth where I said, just because someone else doesn't tell you, good job, and I'm proud of you, doesn't negate or take away from the amazing thing you just did. Right. And so I had to really take that in. And then I waited a couple of days when I was ready to be able to have that conversation and communicate, like, hey, I came to you with something important. What I needed to hear from you was just, I'm proud of you, or just some sort of like, I see you, right? You overcame something that's really hard. So it's an everyday practice. And what I've learned too is how not to act in that reactive state, or, start yelling or whatever. I'll take a couple of days if I need to, and then I reach out to my support system. But again, these are systems that I have been putting into place ever since, I started really tapping into these things. And every teacher that gave a golden nugget, I would take that with me, and then I would practice whatever that teacher gave me for an amount of time, right? Until that just became kind of like a natural thing for me, or a habitual thing. And I was able to put that in my toolbox. So now what you see today is years of finding different teachers, putting different things into practice time and time again. And in the beginning, it was not like that. I was very reactive. And I still have my moments, you always do, but it's coming back from that place of compassion and forgiveness for yourself to say, this is all part of the journey. It's all part of the process. And like I said, that's why I really believe in being authentic. And thank you so much, Jenny, for seeing that. Because I feel then people can really relate, and then it's understandable. And it's like, oh, well, here's a really real person. Oh, I get it. Oh, okay. This is okay. Makes sense, kind of like a breath of fresh air, because we don't really have that, right? And again, it's developing community, and it's like, oh, I'm not alone, because really that's what it comes down to, is that you want to feel like there's someone around you that understands you, there's someone who can hear you or get it. And so again, it's being patient and kind with yourself when maybe you do reach out to someone and they don't give you that response that you were looking for, and holding that space for yourself and saying, I am strong, I'm lovable. And I took it back to myself and I was like, I'm proud of myself. No matter what, if someone else doesn't understand what I just did, I have been through a journey. I remember breaking down and crying. I remember standing in the kitchen thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make it another day. I don't know if I want to make it another day. This is hard. This sucks. And then to be able to say, like, no, I am worthy. I can do it. This is just a moment in time. It's okay. And then to be able to get to something that you do a mud girl obstacle course, that's pretty fascinating and that's pretty empowering. And so taking back those memories and saying, I just did something really strong. And I posted a video on social media and there was a student of mine who saw it and it inspired her and she sent me a message. And so it was like, see, okay, we're doing all right here. This is worth it. Not only for helping other people, but for my own internal child who may need that validation, I can give that back to myself and it's say like, you did good, like you did well. I'm so proud of you. Look, we're so strong. We can do it. So it's again, it's that practice and finding different teachers and applying those things on a daily basis in different modalities.
Well, I'm so sorry you experienced that when you first sort of went out on that limb, but it sounds like it was a practice for you, and now you're able to share it with other people.
Yeah.
You're also getting some nice comments in the chat. I think some of these are sent more directly to us. So, somebody's saying they're glad that you're doing better and paying it forward to all of us. Somebody else saying that they are so glad to hear that they are not alone. They're loving the encouragement. They're planning to go back and review the video from last week to remind
Oh, that's so
themselves
wonderful.
that they can love themselves unconditionally. So, so people are very much enjoying that.
That's
Now,
wonderful.
we talk about the transition, sort of like the transformation of you and how you got to that place. Is it like, for example, like going back to the example of the mud run, right? It's like you don't just do one mud run and then you're fit. So although that would be cool because I did one 10 years ago and I would like to still be living off of that
Yeah.
one mud run 10 years ago. But is the self-love practice sort of like something where you kind of have to keep working out? Like you got to drink your water, you got to work out, you got to do the self-love, otherwise it kind of can diminish? Or is it something where you have a handle on it and you just needed a check-in every once in a while? We've got probably like 2 minutes to do that part.
Sure. So I realize that for me, it's kind of like a check-in, but I like setting goals for myself. So for me, I was like, okay, how do I want to show up next time? Do I want it? I started looking into the Tough Mudder and I was like, am I ready? Like, if I give myself a year goal because I want to achieve these things, how can I keep myself on track? So for me, it's like that check-in, but it's also that thing that helps with my evolution and knowing myself, right? What's my journey? What do I ultimately want to achieve? What do I want to do? And I do really good at with challenges or something that pushes me and kind of forces me to again, we talked about I may not be the most disciplined person, but I am consistent. So I need things that help me be disciplined. So what do? I give myself challenges and stuff like that. So that's kind of the way that I set it up.
So it's kind of continuing same thing. Like maybe you're doing the mirror exercises or you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to share this news with somebody and see what their reaction is.
Yeah.
And then know that it might not be what you want. And then you're just going to have to talk to yourself.
That's it. And what I call it is parenting. I do a lot of parenting with myself. Like, hey, it's okay. And sometimes I'll feel hurt or I'll feel sad. And I've had to learn how to give myself permission to feel sad and upset about whatever the case may be, but also recognizing that it's an emotional regulation. I don't need to go lashing out to everybody and spewing all of these things. It's just like, hey, that wasn't the most favorable thing. I didn't really like that. Okay, we're going to try something different. And so that also helps me to try something new, right? Because that's that feedback. It's like, oh, I didn't really like, there's something that energetically just didn't fit right with that. How can I try something new to get then the response or what I'm looking for, right? And again, going back to that state within ourselves, being like, well, where is it that it's someone else? Or is it me? Is it me that's creating a story? Is it me? Where can I check in with myself and help regulate myself?
Excellent. I think that's a perfect place to end. Remind everybody one more time how they can enter, because I've gotten some questions about that.
Sure. Okay, so there was the two. I gave a phrase, a word last week and a word today, and so the first people that can email me with that word, that phrase, will get the personal coaching, and then the first 10 people that email me and give me 2 sentences, one about what inspired you last week, any new information, and then going on to this week, what inspired you, what motivates you, what's something that you would like to work on. And it's for the first 10 people who will email me, and then we will do that mastermind group. For the first 2, it's personal one-on-one individual coaching. For the first 10, it's that with the 2 sentences, it's for that mastermind group work.
Wonderful. Jesse, thank you so much for being so open and for sharing so authentically. You have been a joy. I know a lot of people really enjoyed this. And so they're saying you are a beautiful, bright, inspiring soul. So I hope that you feel the love today. It's a wonderful group. So here's the reminder, you guys. Sarah has a YouTube channel that has the replays of all of these different chats. We meet once a week, and over the weeks, I mean, there's an abundance of information out there, and I love that they're all kind of collaborated together on the YouTube channel. So you can see part 1. I know that many of you found that to be helpful as well. So if you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch that. If you want to watch the replay of this, just to kind of like hone in on some of those phrases, maybe listen in the car, listen while you're getting ready in the morning, that will be up by Wednesday. And the link to the YouTube channel, thank you to the Sarah crew, who is so awesome, is actually in the chat right now. Jesse, have a beautiful rest of your week. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.